Anybody out there know who Eddie Van Halen is? I'm hoping one person at least will be able to say yes in the comments down below. But somehow I'm going to tie this shoe to one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And it does make sense in my head, and hopefully it'll make sense to you guys after I've explained it. But also we're going to get into these two shoes, because there's a couple of them, and it's all about this tearaway stuff that's going on, where you've got the upper on there and you just take that right off and reveal another upper down below. Now there's a spectrum of uppers being removed on shoes that goes all the way from what we've got here. Even further extreme than that is this right here. This was a very recent video I did for the Dunk Low, Flip the Old School I think it was, which just had a tissue paper cover on it, and you can't keep them like that. It's not going to work. You're going to wear them and it's going to, even like a hint of rain, and they'll just melt away. So that upper was supposed to be removed, but then you get these guys, which I'm afraid I think also the upper is supposed to be removed, but it's a little bit more permanent or less temporary than the cover of those Flip the Old Schools. But then you kind of get to the other end of the spectrum, where it's up to you the user, about where you're going to take the upper off and leave the upper on, if you know what I'm saying. And it's kind of up to the user in that way, you know, the person who owns the shoes, whether or not they take the entire upper off. I remember this happened with the Air Jordan 12 Chinese New Year's a couple of years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, where you could remove certain panels. You could remove all of the panels if you wanted to, but really it was a kind of choice thing. Keep a few in black, keep a few, and sort of reveal a few with the colourful Chinese New Year images below. And this one, I think these shoes today, there's two of them. There's a Fauna one and there's an Arctic one. The Fauna one being brown and the Arctic one being yellow. And they're right in the middle of that spectrum. That you couldn't leave the outer on permanently. It just wouldn't work. I think they deteriorate over time, and it just doesn't look that great. But equally, if you did leave it on, it wouldn't just melt away like those Flip the Old Schools, if you know what I mean. So that's the whole story of the shoes. It's right in the middle of the spectrum on those removable uppers, and something about those removable uppers ties it together with Eddie Van Halen, the guitarist of immortal fame. And we're going to have a look at these two shoes. I'm going to go through them bit by bit with you guys today, show you some of the hits on it, some of the unique branding, some of the positioning on it, and a little bit of history, because it's that history that ties it to Eddie. So let's get into it and take a close-up look at these two Nike Air Force One Tearaways. This is the Tokyo About 23 Secret channel. Tokyo About 23 Secret channel is my nature absolutely there. My nature media aside. Every single day from Tokyo, Japan, I bring you content about upcoming secret releases, secret news, and secret reviews. But only once ever have I tied a shoe to Eddie Van Halen, and that's right here, right now, today. This is the first time I've ever done that. And the thing that I'm going for, here's the whole thing. I'm not going to drag this on and like get to the very end of the video and then start talking about it. I'm not like that. So getting straight to the point about Eddie Van Halen, my thinking is this, right? And I'm no guitarist at all. I appreciate guitars. It's one of my favorite instruments. I love electric guitars, especially guitar solos. But me, myself, nah, not got any skills in that department. So if I make a mess of things with my fingers right here, please accept my apology. But the point is that Eddie Van Halen, he made popular a particular style of guitaring, if I can say that. Now, generally speaking, if you're right-handed, your left hand's on what they call the fretboard up here, which chooses the notes, and the right hand has a plectrum or something to actually play the notes down here. Again, apologies, guitarists out there, if I've got that very, very wrong. But the thing that Eddie Van Halen was doing was he tended to be his index finger, where he'd run that off of the playing part up the neck, which is usually the part where you're just picking notes, and he'd actually sort of hit the strings along the neck of the guitar, and the fretboard, I think it's called, the guitar. And now he did not invent that. Okay, that's my point, and that's the thing that ties this shoe to Eddie Van Halen. He did not invent that technique, and there's a word for it. I'm sure somebody out there will be able to tell us what it's called to actually hit the strings of a guitar rather than just place your fingers on there to get the notes. And he made it popular. Now, other people must have done it before he did it, but because of his sort of, to be honest, it was because of his personality. He's a very outgoing, smiley, happy guy, and that's what really attracted people to Eddie Van Halen. And of course, he was a genius with guitar, and so he made it popular. He was, you know, many people have been doing it, but he was the big sort of breakout star of that technique. And these shoes, this upper, this removable upper. The breakout stars for me of that technique is clocked out of China, I think out of Hong Kong if I remember rightly. And I don't know how many I'll be able to find, but I'll find one or two pictures behind you here. The big ones for me were the Air Jordan 1 mids, which were an absolutely beautiful shoe without the upper removed, and then you took the upper away and it revealed an even more beautiful shoe below. But there's also been Air Force 1s and other shoes around. There were two Air Force 1s actually, maybe even more. There's a rose gold one and a blue one. But anyway, for me, I'm sure, and I'm no historian, but I'm sure that before Clock got their hands on the idea of removable uppers to reveal a second upper below, other brands or other lines or other collaborations had been doing it. But for me, they're the Eddie Van Halens. They're the ones who brought it mainstream and made it a really big deal. And we're talking probably about, I'm going to go with 2.5 years ago. 2 years ago, they started doing that. And they've kept doing it. Claude have kept doing that. But then, like I said, other lines and other brands have come along and jumped on that, like Air Jordan did with the 12s. And that's what we've got today with these Air Force 1s. But they're not the first Air Force 1 tearaways. There have been others almost identical to these. But the point being that once you rip away that other upper or cut away the upper, and we'll get into that today, the rip versus the cut, it reveals a different shoe below of its own unique colorway. So while it looks like the same shoe when it's got its clothes on, but once you derobe it and take off that outside layer, then you get a unique shoe underneath. And like I say, we've been there before with these Air Force 1s, and we also, like I said, there was the Dunk Lows with that flip the old school with a sort of tissue paper upper that revealed a mismatched shoe underneath with ostrich leather and upside down swooshes, but that's a whole different story as well. And then coming back to these Air Force 1s, the last thing before we actually get into the shoe is the most recent video I did was an Air Force 1 Flyknit Crater rubber. The outsole was, it's all about recycling or upcycling materials in the upper and in the outsole midsole unit there. And so that's a very sort of unique kind of path in the Air Force 1 line. And then this is another unique path in the Air Force 1 line. And all these kind of things, they lean towards next year's 40th anniversary of the Air Force 1s being a big year. So that's the sort of history, that's the crazy tie-up in my bonkers brain that brings me Eddie Van Halen and Air Force 1s together. Hopefully you guys appreciate that, and if you don't, feel free to laugh at me and feel free to tell me in the comments down below. But if you do, feel free to tell me in the comments down below as well. Now into the shoes. I did say there were two. There's a brown one and a yellow one. The brown one's Fauna and the yellow one's Arctic. And we'll get into the two shoes, mostly the browns, because they have more and better pictures out there than the yellow ones, but also the yellow ones have a particular reveal on them that's very helpful for what we're doing today. So first things first, here's what the shoes look like when they're closed, when they haven't been derobed, when they've still got that outer layer on them. And to be honest, they look kind of nice. Very simple, sort of all white with a nice head of colour up on the tongues. In the case of the Fauna ones, it's brown up there. In the case of the Arctic ones, it's yellow. But there's also a sort of hint of the colours that are below that removable upper, and you can get a sense of brown in the Faunas, and you get a sense of yellow in the Arctic ones. It's not really pushing through real hard, but it is sort of, you can feel it there, and that would have been enough for me. You know, a sort of, I don't know, a hint of brown Air Force 1s would have been kind of a clever shoe. But what's basically going on, if we zoom in on these removable uppers, you can see they're kind of perforated. And they've got a sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a breathability about them. And that also lets the colour kind of fade through before you remove it. And speaking of removing, we can look at, I think the best place is to look at the swoosh and at the bottom of the lacing system. Now, if I remember right on this, on the swoosh, there are little scissors, just a little icon of scissors telling you that this is a place that's removable. But then if we flip that out to the bottom of the lacing system, you'll be able to see on there, instead of saying just a picture of scissors, it actually says, I think, tear here. And there's a bit of a sort of there's a bit of a contradiction there, because scissors cut, which is a nice neat line, versus tear, just rip it away. Now there is a picture, and it's a great looking picture, which shows you the ripped up kind of randomly. It's almost like a bear has kind of destroyed the shoe, and it shows you some of the upper removed and some not, which is obviously the tearaway approach to it. But I'm sure you can do a cleaner job if you actually go down the scissors line. And this is where we can get into those yellow ones, the Arctics, because you get a better sense of that reveal on them than you do on the brown ones with this picture here, because you can see that the swoosh has been revealed in a sort of pastel colour. color, but behind that on the midsection of the midfoot on the shoe is a very deeper, stronger yellow. But what really interests me is actually if you go up above that, and the lacing system there has also been revealed in another shade of yellow, and that is that lacing system on there that's important to me, because it means they really have taken the time in lots of different places on the shoe, and just about everything, if not absolutely everything on the top end, is removable to reveal something else down below. So it's very nice. Now, a unique thing to look at, there's two last things I think that I want to get to. You know, there's a third, and I'm going to do it first. I want to just nip down to the branding on the midsole, because on those craters that I talked about, it was embossed, no, debossed into the midsole. So it was like pushing into the midsole, but the standard branding on the Air Force Ones is embossed and kind of coming off. And you can see these guys here, even though it's white on white, you can see that that branding on the midsole is actually coming off the midsole. So it's embossed as opposed to debossed like on those crater Flyknit guys. And then the other two things to go to is I kind of actually like the branding on the back of both pairs of these guys. Very, very simple pen outline branding, and of course it's simple because when you rip that away it'll reveal more detailed and complex branding down below, but I kind of like it the way it is, and I'm kind of hoping that somewhere they'll be able to bring out these shoes with a more permanent upper on them, because they're actually kind of cool just the way they are. And speaking of cool, the last thing to look at is the insoles on these guys, which are questionably cool because they are all question marks. Now I can show you the yellow ones like this, but I won't dwell on those for very long because it's almost impossible to see what's going on. But if I flip that to the brown ones, you can see much more easily the detailing on the insole in these guys here, and it very much complements the removed or revealed shoe rather than the hidden kind of cloaked shoe in all white. And that's a pretty good place to finish this one up. So hopefully I've been able to sort of spark your interest in these guys. Maybe that idea about Eddie Van Halen was something you were like, yes, I'm all over that. Equally, you might be like, that's insulting to the king of guitar. So either way, I think it's an interesting comparison to make, and hopefully you guys appreciate it one way or the other. But for now, it's time to just wrap this up. I've given you an insight into both of these shoes. Didn't give you the drop date, which is May the 15th, so they're not too far away. Today's May the 4th, but I doubt if this video will go up until about May the 6th or 7th, so about a week ahead of schedule. So hopefully you'll get an idea about these shoes, and if you're interested, you go out and grab yourself a pair. But for now, it's time for me just to wrap this one up. Thank you guys for checking out the content as I do every single day. I do truly appreciate it. But because I do this every single day, I get to say the same thing at the end of every single video, which is that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.